Right, let's we're going to kind of tie off that design and kind of clean it up and move it to one side, and then we're going to go back to the script and we're going to look at something else. Now, our first session, you know, I talked about the idea, this kind of misconception that people can just make stuff up. You can just go, oh, I know that, and create. That's totally not true. So I'm going to just hold these up on the screen. You know, I said, like, every good artist has got a book. Get a book of just ideas. A book of entirely rubbish drawings is what you need. Okay, because it's almost impossible to store everything in your brain. So these, I started these on the train in this morning. So I'm going to put them on the screen so that you can see them. They look like that. They just really kind of rough, doodly sketches. Some of them I like, and some of them I hate. So this one is, we're going to do something with that possibly, and that one I like the idea of like them shooting off the bridge. That's a smoky window. Terrible idea. And then there's this one of the guy kind of like begging for his life, and yeah. So the notion that you can just kind of create without any prompts or without any advice is rubbish. No one can do it at all, ever. There is no artist on the planet that is able to just create. All right, anyone who pretends to be is a charlatan. So with that in mind, when we start to think about more complex shots, we have to be prepared to do some research and to do some kind of creative problem solving in order to get to a point where we've got content that really does work and does make sense. An environment shot, like a big kind of set piece shot like the one we've just done, this is actually fairly straightforward, because there's, apart from the FX animation, so the smoke, there's not really too much to worry about from an animation perspective. From a design perspective, yes, it has real challenges in there. So for whoever the background painter is, the visual development artist that has to turn this ugly sketch into a full concept piece is going to have a challenge, but it's not too bad. Characters, that's where it starts to get a little bit complex. And this is where we start to look at the real differences that exist between like character designers and actual compositional design and shot design for film. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of the layers that I've just worked on, even my guide layer, everything, and take all of that, and I'm going to place it into a folder. I'm just going to call that comp 1. Or comp exclamation mark. And then what I'll do, so that I don't accidentally wreck that, I've just locked it, just kind of sealed it away, and then create a new layer to work from. Now we could go down there, we could work at the bottom panel if we want to, but I quite like this process of kind of creating something, saving it, package it, seal it, move on. When we're working with the large format document as well, a PSV file, we can do that. It's fine to just have an idea and kind of move on and keep going and doing it in other ways. There are some bits of software that do intuitively allow you to do this, and I've just realized that I don't have it on my little dock at the bottom. There's a really cool piece of software called Mischief. I don't know if anyone's used Mischief before. Nod, throw your hand in the air if you use Mischief. Get Mischief. Mischief is completely free, and it doesn't have any of the tools that Photoshop has. It's just a drawing tool, but it allows you to create infinite canvases. So you can just keep drawing and drawing and drawing, and the sketches kind of just go on forever. It's a really good tool for that kind of, package a piece of work, move on to the next thing. So yeah, Mischief's a good bit of software for that. I might do a quick demo of it at the end just so you can see it. Anyway, back to this. Now, the drawing that I'm going to go with, I'm going to do kind of play with two. There's this line in the script. Where are we? Let's go all the way out. Back to this. There's a line in the script that I think is really important that we want to kind of really look at. There it is. This one, with all due respect, sir, I was not trained to murder the innocent, and then just above it with the barn door shutting. There's some really good close-up performance there that's really important because it's so dialogue-led. it's quite likely that the director's preference is to stay with like a reverse shot, like a really simplistic filmmaking tool. Now, from a compositional perspective, when we're designing shots, we have to be very diligent in what we put as important and what we put as not important. When you're working to deadlines, you're working as part of a team, there's tens of millions or hundreds of millions of pounds on the line for a production. You want to be sure that when you're reading a script, you're designing the things that need to be designed and you're ignoring the things that can be held back and can be worried about later. So that's why this is important. So everything up to, this train to follow orders bit. So just from there, kind of there. That piece there. So Frollo shuts the door and then turns to Phoebe, says, burn it. Phoebe says, what? Until it smoulders, these people are traitors. It's a shot, reverse shot. It's not important. If we were being paid as story artists and we're designing those compositions and we spent 4 or 5 days planning out those shots and the director just turns around and says, oh no, that was just going to be headshots. Like you've just wasted a week of your life designing these things. It's not going to look particularly good. So we need to kind of read into that and say, right, that's not important. That's just a headshot. However, there might be some other stuff. Just this line here. Frollo is interrogating the miller. Music lower. I like that. Just no music. We haven't got time for music. This is so dramatic that it's going to be without music. But that line implies something complex visually. Frollo is interrogating the miller. Well, how? How do you interrogate someone? Like, what are the poses for that? That is a visual challenge. So do you see what I mean about reading that script? There's 5 or 6 lines of script that you can just dismiss and go, not important. But at the same time, there may be one sentence in there that is hugely important for a story artist to tackle. Because nobody at this stage, apart from maybe in the director's imagination, no one can see what that shot is going to look like at the end and how it can be conveyed that the characters and the narrative are kind of where they are. We need to emphasize at this stage, when you think about the entire narrative, we need to take Frollo as a character from someone who is in charge and who's quite, who kind of pontificates and lords it over people, who's controlling and manipulative. We know he's that. We've seen that in the story already, and that's already present in the script. This is the point in time where we transition from Frollo, the kind of cruel religious leader, to Frollo, the murderous psychopath. We have to transition that character, and we have to do so in a way that our audience are going to completely buy into it, that this guy is outright evil. There is nothing in here good about him. He is a straight killer. So what we do in this shot is going to help translate that. So we need to think very, very carefully about it. So going back to Photoshop, and we've got this kind of blank canvas to work on. Am I still green? Nope, I've got a better color to work with. When we think about this space and how we break it up, there are very clear rules about how we establish certain meaning. So I said to you about if we've got a big open shot, we do that. Yeah, if you've got like this big expanse, this huge space you want to cover, or you've got lots of information to get in, like a windmill on fire, a good starting point is a low horizon line because it implies the camera's low, therefore it's capturing a wide space. You know, it's got a lot. There's a lot in frame that it can capture. The other thing that it can do is it can give the implication that the camera is not just capturing a lot of information, but that it is pointing upwards. Okay, so if we think about this, I'm just going to sort of randomly doodle. Let's say we've got a character that's just kind of standing here, like so. Shooting them from a long way away will produce a low horizon line. So I'm thinking side on here. But if the camera is here, yeah, facing at the person, what you get in the frame is basically that. You're just going to get a head and shoulders in the frame. You step backwards. If we then take that camera and put it here, going that way, the frame it's going to look like that. That is far more dominant, you know, because we're kind of pointing upwards, we're pointing into the distance. It's far more dominant as opposed than just having the camera straight at someone. And that's just like a standard rule. You can see it in painting, like in traditional painting, especially artists like during the pre-Raphaelite movement and stuff, they would place objects of higher importance higher up in the composition. And that's what we're going to try and look to do. So going back to my design, there was two that I was thinking of, but there's a really cool kind of interrogation one. Let's just get through a couple of pages of rubbish. Where are we? Sorry. All right, okay, so there's kind of two pieces of interrogation here that I was kind of working with, and both of them do the same thing. So the first sketch idea that I had was that like Frollo's head's kind of up here, and he's actually on his horse. So the horse is kind of here in the shot. It's rough, don't judge me. So the horse's head's kind of down here, and its body's here, and Frollo's kind of sitting astride it like this, and then the actual person that's being interrogated is down here. So that was my initial thought, was to kind of place one character high up here, with the horse kind of like that. It would still have a low horizon line. The horizon line would still be relatively low, like this. So that's one idea, and it's the same principle. Higher up, important, domineering. Lower down, weaker character. So that's one way I was thinking to do it. The other way of thinking to do it was similar, actually, in theme. Was, again, you go for a kind of relatively low horizon, but it's not low because it's a wide expanse. It's a low because what we were doing instead was framing the whole bodies of the characters. So Frodo had he's got like a weird triangular hat thing. So it's kind of like that. And he has the weird puffy sleeves. And then I kind of had his horse like half in the shot there. Again, same thing. There's his little ears. So there was the horse, there was Frollo, and instead of having a head and shoulders, I quite liked the idea of like having the character almost slumped on the floor. And then up here, having Phoebus, like just kind of half in the shot. Kind of like that. Now, these two designs, they are different, but there are similarities. Can you see where the similarity is in terms of placement? The character that is dominant, the one that is the threat within this in terms of narrative, is placed really high up in the shot. Okay, really, really high up. The character that's kind of the victim, so the miller in this instance, is really low down. Now, no, not that one. This one is very, very difficult to work with further because there's a problem with the composition here. This is fine. This is a bad horse. This is the character that's about to die, and we can see the kind of relationship between them. You know, you've got some relatively clear grouping going on. You know, because you've got multiple characters here. They are grouped in terms of like how you cut the shot in half, so they exist just in one half of the shot, so that principle's fine. The problem with it though is there's nothing in the background. Like it's okay thinking about putting characters places, but actually you've got a problem here. How do you fill that background? How do you create content that's more than just the characters? So this one's got some kind of issues with it. In comparison, this one has by putting a character right here in the foreground. And this is an important character as well, because it's the one that we are kind of on the side of, or at least sympathize with initially. So having him right here in the foreground is really effective. First off, because he's telling us which way to look. So his eye line is basically saying, look that way. So we look that way. This guy's the arch of his back again is saying look that way. So he's giving us that direction and that movement through the shot, which works quite nicely. But also by having a giant character in the foreground, if you think about this just as a flat image, he occupies space. So he's kind of covering up any potential issues that might be there in terms of like what you put in the background or how you use a matte background. So there's two different approaches here. Either one of them could potentially be quite effective. But what I would like you guys to do is pick one. So either a 2-character setup. So we're just going back. We are focusing on that specific line. Frollo is interrogating the miller. That specific line. Pick one of these. A 2-character setup where it is just Frollo and the miller. You don't have to follow that. You don't have to put him on a horse. You can make him stand. I just thought the horse thing was kind of interesting. So Frollo and the miller, or Frollo and the miller and Phoebus, a 3-character setup. But I want you to play by the rules. Balance, rhythm, grouping are the most important ones with this. Okay, how do you fill them into the shot? How do you group them together? And if you decide to do the horse before I kind of let you attack this and we reflect on it, don't just try and draw a horse. Because do any of you have a horse? No, you don't even have horses. Okay, how many of you have got a dog? Okay, could you draw a dog? No, most people who've got a dog can't draw a dog. So you don't even have a horse. Don't even try and draw a horse. Right, it's just not worth it. Use research. Research is your friend. Okay, Pinterest is your friend. So if you're going to do this, if you're going to follow it, I'm going to do the horse one because I want to tackle the challenge of the empty space in the composition. So I'm going to focus on the horse one. But in order to do that, I will need to look at horses. Okay. And this is everything wrong with the world, by the way. Look at that horse. We turned that into that. Think about that, because that's disgraceful. Okay, so yeah, go and do some research. Look at horses. I'm going to give you about 20 minutes on this. 20 minutes to either do a 3-person or a 2-person composition. But think about that rule of Frollo. Place him at the top. Get him high up in the composition, because he's the dominant figure in this. He's the one that we're supposed to be afraid of. He's the one who's about to do something very, very bad. So you've got to get him towards the top of the composition. So think about it, well, not like that. Think about it in terms of guidelines. You want to get his eye line really, really high up. Okay? Right, go for it. Tackle it. And I will try and tackle it as well. I'm going to tackle the tougher one, though. Yes. After we've done this one, so 20 minutes, then we'll take a break. That's fine, yeah, we're going to go till 22, then we'll take a break, and then we'll go around to half one. Okay, horses, image. So yeah, 20 minutes now. Tackle it as best you can, and see a 2-person or a 3-person. I'm going to go with this one, and I'm going to try my very best to tackle this kind of distressing big space that exists just there. Okay.